Hello, this video is going to be about basic UNIX commands.
To understand what's going on with these directories and commands a little bit better, I want to make this analogy to directories and folders. So if you had this big filing cabinet, and you knew that you had to go pick out a particular file, you could walk over to that cabinet and then you would know, for example, that the thing that I had was under the letter B, so I would maybe know to open this particular drawer. And not just that, the first two letters were BR, so I would be able to go even further in there and pull out the folder that I needed. They don't necessarily have to be arranged alphabetically, but that's one way of arranging your directories and subdirectories, which you can also think of as folders, at which point you have some files in there. Now, basically, the computer has the analogy to that filing cabinet. You may have seen before a graphical user interface, and you use something like Finder or Explorer, where you can click through your documents and see what's in there. On the command line interface, you instead do it in a text-based way. You type in your commands and your output is returned to you in text.
So now that we have this analogy of a clerk that you are sending to go find a file, and I've told you what the terminal looks like, let's look at what the paths in your computer will look like. At the very top, you have what's called the root, and this is where all things start. Now, inside that, you would have more directories or folders. So one could be called home, another one could be called settings. You probably have documents, applications, things like that in there. And let's say you're sitting at home. Now, relative to being at home, you can just access user one because it's inside the folder that you are looking at anyway. So you can just say, oh, just give me user one. I'm going to do some commands and I'm just directly going to access user one. On the other hand, you may refer to things using an absolute path, which means you start again at the root. Then the root is just this forward slash, and the first directory that you have down from there is home. And home also points to user two. So you can basically follow this whole tree down to refer to the whole thing of home user 2. Because if you are inside, if you are somewhere else, then this would always let you access this. So this is what's called an absolute path. So this is going to be useful when you're doing kind of your finding, like just navigating throughout your files. You might want to use relative paths to get somewhere relative to where you are, or you might just want to take the direct route to a certain file. So here are some special file names. Forward slash, as I mentioned, is just the root. Tilde is going to be your home directory, and that's usually something like, I think it's going to be users and then your name. Dot, so just like period, is going to be the current working directory. And dot dot moves you one directory above. Okay, this might not make sense quite yet, and it hopefully will make more sense as we go through the different commands that you can do on a terminal. To be able to navigate within your file system, within the tree, you first need to know where you are. On a previous slide, I said you were sitting at home. So if you were to type in pwd, it would actually give you home. pwd means print the name of the current working directory, which is your location. It's kind of like you're in the filing cabinet now. Now, if you know where you are, you can navigate to anywhere else you need to be. Now you need to navigate around, so you can use CD to do that. So in your terminal, if you type in CD dot, that just keeps you in the same place. CD dot dot will move you above one more. So you can do CD just to stay in the same place. This moves you one above. And one thing that's going to be probably pretty useful for you is CD with a tilde, which always takes you back to your home. Now, once you are navigated to a certain directory, you can actually see what all those files or other directories are in that folder. You could just type in ls. So with ls, it'll list all the files that are in there. And one thing I guess I want to point out, ls will list the contents of the current working directory. You can also do ls of any directory you like. So here's an ls that is listing things from a different directory where it's set by the absolute path. And of course, you can also do ls dot, that would list the contents of the current working directory. And you can do ls dot dot, which would give you the contents of the directory above. So please do give it a shot. Just list out those contents and see if it's giving you the thing that you kind of expect. And does it match the GUI? Just does it match your Finder or Explorer?
The next thing I want to show you is the command prompt, which will look something like this. First, you'll have your username, then you'll have the host, so it's username at host. You will have your working directory, and then after that, you'll have a place that has the prompt, which is the place that you're going to type in your commands. I'm going to show you an example on EOS. So let me go ahead and log in to EOS by SSHing. And then when you do this, it will automatically take you to your home. So if I type in pwd, that's going to show my Unity ID. I can cd to a higher directory with cd dot dot, and you can see I moved one above. I can cd tilde, and I'm back at my home. The next thing I'm going to do is work through a very specific example that shows cd and ls, but also shows you how to move through your directories. So I'm giving you this structure right here, and my directory here is going to be called Dictionary Project, and then I have these subfolders or subdirectories in here. And let's assume that you're in the top level directory, which is right here, and I want to list all the files inside word list using UNIX commands. You can, of course, take a moment to think about how you would answer this question. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make sure I'm inside Dictionary Project, which you can do by cding into it. I use a relative file path. I'm going to list out what I have there. I have word list, which is current, and I can do ls word list to list out all the files that are in my current directory. And I can also do ls-a, which gives me dot and dot dot.
mkdir creates a new directory. So just mkdir, my folder, whatever you want to name it, will create a folder in the location that you are in. Now you can cd into my folder. If you do ls, it will show you that that folder is empty. There's one more experiment that I want you to try. Once you have made my folder, and go back and cd into the original place that you were in, so cd into the parent, and do ls. You should find that whatever ls lists, it is also now going to include my folder because you just created it. Right? So basically, we're just creating a new directory or new folder. This is equivalent to if you were in the GUI to in Explorer, you were going to do File, New Folder, and then name it My Folder.
So let's do another example. Let's say again you're in Dictionary Project and you want to add a directory called lib using UNIX commands. So I have here my Dictionary Project. I'm cd'd into Dictionary Project. I can do make dir lib, and if I do ls, lib is right there.
A few more. MV moves or renames a file. So if you named a file something and you thought, oh, I don't like that name, you can do MV, the starting name, to the better name. So it's always MV from to. MV space from space to. Now, that changes the name and it keeps it in the same directory that you were already in. So these are relative accesses. You can, of course, access files by their absolute file path. So you can take a file and you can move it to a different directory in this way. Okay?
Let's do an example. In this case, I want to rename this file called fruit.txt into vegetable.txt. So let's take a look. I am going to have to, I can move into word list, and then I see that I have fruit.txt, and I'm just going to do mv from fruit.txt to vegetable.txt. And ls shows that I changed the name.
If you are confused about any of the commands, then you can use man. So in your terminal, just type in man ls, and it will give you output for how the ls command works. You can type in man for any other command there is. I have a couple of examples here. You can even do man, which is to read the manual for the manual. rm will remove files. So this is the thing that deletes files. So you do have to be careful with this. There is no trash or recycling bin associated with it. Copy. CP. Copy is just like move, except it does not delete the original, and it's still copy from and to, only it's just this time the from keeps staying the same. If you do copy stupid name.txt, better name.txt, and then rm, which is remove stupid name.txt, this ends up being the same thing as doing mv, just it takes multiple lines to do it.
Let's do that same example again. How do you rename fruit.txt to vegetable.txt using UNIX commands? Next, let's talk about a few helpful shortcuts to help you navigate through the terminal. You can use up and down arrows to scroll through commands. This will help you not have to retype a command. If you hit the up arrow a couple times and you need to reuse that command, you can do so, and then that command will pop up. You can use tab completion, so if you have a long file name, or you know for sure that there's a file that starts with E115, you can type that in and then hit tab, and that will give you the rest of the file name. And then we have this concept of chaining, which we will only be using semicolons in this class, that lets you combine multiple commands. For example, maybe you cd into your home directory, then you want to print working directory, and then you want to list the contents of that directory. And then finally, we have the clear command. It just sort of scrolls you up so the terminal window is clear. If you have too many commands and you can't figure out what's going on your screen, just type in clear, and that will remove everything. It's still in the history, so you're still in the same place, but it does clear it out for you.
So here, I've changed fruit. I have fruit.txt again, and now I'm going to want to copy fruit.txt into vegetable.txt. And if I do an ls, I now have both files, fruit.txt and vegetable.txt. So when I rm fruit.txt, I can ls, and I see I have the same result as I did before.
If you are uncomfortable with using the terminal and you want a little bit more practice, Terminus is a really nice game that is in the browser, and it's there to get you used to the basic commands. It does not have everything that the Unix system could have, but it will get you more comfortable with things like cd and ls and pwd. And in fact, the game itself will prompt you with those commands, and it's literally just there to get you some mechanical practice to understand what's going on.
The last part about UNIX commands that we'll talk about are going to be UNIX special characters and grep. Grep is about pattern matching, and so we'll talk about how to use that to become more of a power user in the shell. We'll go over some basic examples.
So one thing I'd like to point out is that there are special symbols like tilde and star, question mark, exclamation point, ampersand, and these do different things in context. The tilde often indicates your home directory. One that I like is star because it's a wildcard and it matches anything. And sometimes these things even have different meanings depending on the context that you're using them in. So today we'll talk about how it's used in grep just a little bit.
grep is the Unix text editor search command. If you've ever done a Control F inside your documents, this is basically the command line version of that. It stands for Global Regular Expression Print. It is a standalone utility, so you can use this on your terminal to find text. There are other kinds of greps like egrep and fgrep, just letting you know so that you're aware that that's a thing. So the reason that you might want to use grep is because you can search for things that are a little bit more complicated than typing in the exact word. For example, actually, even before we think about grep, what happens if you type in ls star in your command line? You can go ahead and give this a try. Let's suppose, for example, that your directory has the files a.tex, bc.tex, a.dvi, and bc.dvi. So let's say that those are the ones that gets printed out by ls star. What would happen if you typed in ls star.dvi? What would you see? So star, as I've mentioned before, is a pattern that matches any string of symbols. And Unix commands like grep and fgrep and egrep are the things that search inside your text files to find particular patterns that you're interested in. Regex is a big part of Unix. These text editors allow you to do regex to do search and replace. If you ever use a text editor like vi, ed, or emacs, you might be familiar with doing this. There's also other command line utilities that you would use these regular expressions with, like awk and tcl and Perl. If you do any programming, you might be familiar with the re package in Python, or if you do Java, you might know scanner or string split. And so there are particular Unix shell commands that will find that search, will search inside your text files and can even replace text. We'll focus on grep. Regular expressions have been around since the 1970s. They can get pretty complicated. For this class, you're not expected to do anything quite like this, but if you are interested, these are things that you could look into to see what all this pattern matching means. We'll go over some basic patterns instead. Okay, so let's say that you have a file called sample.txt, and you want to find if the word sample exists. So my example file is right here. You can totally create this file and try it on the command line. This is a sample file, hello world, sample text for testing. And I'm going to do grep sample in quotes sample.txt. So this just matches the word sample. So basically the string will just match if it contains the substring. That's all that it is. So what you're going to get printed out on your command line, hopefully you should just see this is a sample file printed out there. There are some reserved characters for regex, so if you're using grep, these things have special meanings and they do something different to find particular patterns. Some characters have special meanings based on their position in the statement. You can match any single character with dot. So for example, let's say I had this file with a bunch of words in it, apple, banana, apricot, apex, orange, grape, and snap to it. And I did egrep or grep ap dot, 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 dot. So dot previously, when we were outside the context of grep, meant your current directory. But here it has a specific meaning, which is that it's a single character. And so if you try this out, you should get some of these lines to print out, but not all of them. It definitely has to have AP in it. And then it has to have enough letters after it. So apple, I think, will go away because it only has 3 letters. And then I think grape should also go away. And so you should only be left with something that has AP and then at least 4 letters after it, or a space would also be fine. Star means 0 or more repetitions. So for example, if I did this grep color, but it's COLOU and then star and then R, that means 0 or more repetitions of U. So looking at this example, I have color spelled without a U, color spelled with a U, color with a bunch of U's. And so those last 2 that are not matching that pattern will disappear. So let's say that you have this file called filename.txt and I have the text here. You could go ahead and create this file in your text editor and save it and place it so that you can get to it and try some grep commands that I'm going to show you on the next slide.